Welcome to the Beau Show. Thanks for watching. Today I want to discuss what is happening in China. Because up until the pandemic, I'm not so sure that people in the West, especially America, really knew how it operated. Sure, you have heard of communism and Mao Zedong, and you know China has a lot of people, to the tune of about 1.4 billion. But you might not have really known how their government works and how it affects people. China, as most of us now understand, was responsible for the entire coronavirus pandemic, with the single most probable source being the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which has a subgrant via EcoHealth from our very own American government. You may keep hearing stories about the virus jumping from bats to humans, but the more information that is revealed, the more it appears that it was indeed the lab. And whether that lab leak was intentional or accidental is up for debate. But we know that the Chinese military had been fantasizing about a coronavirus-style bioweapon as early as 2015. So none of this should surprise you. China has been making advances in its military for decades now, including a hypersonic missile. On April 3rd, China instituted a citywide lockdown in its biggest city of Shanghai for its 26 million residents as part of its zero COVID policy. That lockdown has been going on for 3 weeks now. We all know what that felt like, so to hear about it happening again, even now as our mask mandates for travel are being lifted, it almost seems unfathomable and dire. Despite the strict control measures, Omicron cases are said to be soaring, with the Shanghai Health Commission announcing that more than 200,000 people have been infected. This, of course, leads us to the conclusion that lockdowns simply don't work, and they end up hurting the economy. This will no doubt have a profound effect on China's economy, as it did with our own economy. The vast majority of cases are asymptomatic, which one anonymous resident of Shanghai said should be regarded as evidence of a political game, neglecting the rules of both science and economics. You must understand, though, why this person had to speak anonymously under a pseudonym, because Chinese authorities would no doubt arrest that person for speaking this inconvenient truth. I do find it ironic that the very country who unleashed the virus is now inflicting its own wounds in its purported containment of that virus. But if that Shanghai citizen is right about this being a political game that ignores science and economics, there is a lot to learn from this situation, because China's CCP's endgame is about control. Though it locks down 23 million people in Shanghai, look at how the world got locked down everywhere else. Our economies crumbled when lockdown measures were abundant. Another Shanghai citizen, also speaking under the condition of anonymity, noted this, saying, quote, "It has come to a stage where we have to live with the virus. We do not need to spend so much material and financial resources to seal off the city. After we unlock the city, the serious impact of the social problems caused by the current epidemic will be much higher than the epidemic itself," unquote. And that is something that President Donald Trump said back at the time. He said the cure cannot be worse than the disease. But if you look at how various governments have tried to manage the pandemic, it is clear that a virus like this is simply uncontainable, whether you lock people down or not. Since the end of March, desperate residents have been seeking help online with reports involving starvation, no medical care, suicides, and forced mother-child separation. Access to food has also become a major concern in Shanghai. Check out this video of a man in Shanghai saying he has not eaten in 2 days.
我们已经2天没吃饭了。
有没有一个好心人帮帮我们？帮帮我们穷打工的！
This man is shouting and begging, and someone comes to give him a bag of rice. Take a look at these Shanghai citizens confronting authorities after they have been isolated for 9 days without food.
下一步我就跳楼啊！我跟你说，我跟你说，我跳楼啊！我真的跳楼啊！我跟你说，妈的，我待会儿就跳楼，我现在就跳楼！啊，你不让我发现，你不让我发现，我等一下就跳楼！我跟你说，别动手，动手！啊，给我们跳楼，跳给你们看！哎，对的，搬来对的，还不打人？
This is the reality in Shanghai right now, and its citizens recognize the farce of the zero COVID policy, yet they have no say in the matter. Political dissidence carries a disastrous consequence. Take a look at this video, which has been circulating around social media, of CCP authorities removing residents from a Shanghai building so that they can convert these buildings to quarantine facilities. When I saw this dynamic of Shanghai citizens clashing with the white suit-clad Chinese authorities, it looked just like a scene out of Squid Game. And the power dynamic is the exact same. And ironically, Squid Game is just supposed to be a game, but the consequences are life or death. Similarly, that Shanghai resident that I mentioned earlier talked about this lockdown as a political game. And one citizen involved in this protest of being forced out of their home said this, quote, "The police could take away anyone they wanted to intimidate the rest. They arrested altogether a dozen right from the scene," unquote. That's intimidation. Some of the exact themes that we saw in Squid Game. Everything is predicated upon fear and intimidation. The true pandemic that we experienced was one of fear. Those community buildings are state-owned. And just like the CCP usually does, they take control over that property. That is part of the specter of communism. Very, very little private ownership. And Big Brother, the government, watches over all and protects you. Prices are also soaring under the Big Brother CCP. In this video right here, it shows the exorbitant prices of produce, such as oranges at $2.96 each. Strawberries at $7.68 a pint, and an order of 4 lettuce, 4 cucumbers, 4 loofahs, 3 potatoes, and 14 duck eggs at a cost of $25.14. That's Big Daddy inflation for you, which sounds all too familiar to us, doesn't it? And the relief goods that the government supplies are not proportional to the household size. There's a severe food shortage there. So this is what happens when citizens are forced to be dependent upon government. It's a nightmare. Or you can buy a pack of veggies for $43. But how do you afford that if you can't even go to work because they won't let you out of your house? Or worse yet, they evict you from your building to make room for quarantine centers. And what this is also doing is creating panic buying so that people won't starve. We experienced this in a smaller degree in early 2020 when things like toilet paper and masks and sanitizer were quite scarce. We have been much better off by comparison because we live in a free capitalist democracy. But we still felt some similarities to what is happening right now in Shanghai. And we are all still facing inflation and soaring prices of goods, as well as supply chain crises. The only reason that we know of the travesty of Shanghai is because of outlets like the Epoch Times, who are exposing the truth, even though the citizens have to speak under conditions of anonymity because the regime will retaliate if they know who they are.